good morning, Lionhearts. Your old pal Jordan the Lion. Great to see you again. How are you guys? Good, glad to hear it. Well, today we're gonna do our vlogging back in Los Angeles. I hope you guys enjoyed the last 2 days in Palm Springs. Elvis's birthday, we had to do something Elvis, you know. And of course I wanted to go see Kenny's Robo Lights display at night. I vlogged it twice before, and you know, I forgot that when I read the comments for this new one, the one that we filmed in the evening, it totally didn't go into my mind that most people hadn't seen the other two. I've gotten more subscribers since I did that one, so I hope that you'll go back and see what Robo Lights looks like during the day. I love that place, and I hope I was able to capture it in a way that will make you excited if you come out here to go see it, because Kenny's dream and Kenny's goal is he wants to do a full-on, full-size, full-fledged amusement park like Disneyland. I don't want to give away some of the ideas that he told me he wants to do, but it sounds amazing, and he'd like to do it out in Palm Springs. There's a huge tourist community that comes out to Palm Springs pretty much as Los Angeles, or, you know, thereabouts. And he just has this dream. I actually asked him, would you pick up any of this stuff and move it over there? He said, no, this stuff will stay here. It would just cost way too much to move. He said, I would want to start all over at a new location, get a big piece of property off the 10, and just start building it and make it all regulation safe and everything, and make it rides that you could ride. So how cool would that be? Well, today I actually have to start my day going over to church. I'm working with the kids club today, gotta go visit the little youngsters and get church back in my life. And since it's the new year, what better way to start it off than going there, and I'll get to hear about everybody's Christmas, everybody's New Year, and, you know, just kind of getting my brain back to where it should be. And then after that, I think I'm gonna go vlog over in Toluca Lake, because there's a certain horror star who purchased his first real home. He'd lived pretty much before that here in Hollywood. Every year he had moved to a different apartment, and it was when his career took off here in the early 30s that he bought this house in Toluca Lake and moved in, and we're gonna go see it. I don't want to tell you who it is yet, but trust me, it's worth it. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. Well, good morning, my friends. One quick trip with this guy outside, and then we're heading out. Relieving a little pressure, are you, Jaw? Wow, it is really foggy out here today. Really foggy. Almost like an old horror movie. Well, yep, Sweetie Pie's is definitely gone. You can tell it's been replaced already by the Paleo Diner. Huh. I also noticed that the Phil's Diner written on the side of the train car hasn't been changed or anything, so I'm guessing that must be a historical landmark. Maybe they can't change it. It is so appropriate that the weather is like this, considering what we're going to be doing for the vlog today. We're going to go see the home of Boris Karloff. Oh, they finally got it all painted. It looks great. Ah, it's good to be back. We already did communion, and this is just the calm before the storm. Must be donut day. All right, church was awesome, and now we're off to our location. Well, we've made it. We've made it to a quiet neighborhood here, kind of in the area of Universal Studios, called Toluca Lake. And obviously, Boris Karloff lived in this area because he, during this time, became a pretty big rising star for Universal Pictures. Now, Boris did not come from a theatrical family the way a lot of actors do. He was actually considered by himself as the black sheep of the family. His family had a pretty interesting lineage. One of his brothers, he was one of 9 children, one of his brothers actually became a British diplomat, and when Boris's mother died when he was young, his elder siblings ended up taking care of him and raising him. And it's said that Boris's mother's aunt was actually the woman who The King and I was based on. Now, Boris actually did attend college for a short time and then dropped out because he just felt that he needed something more. And so he ended up leaving London, where he was living, and traveled all the way to Canada and got a farm laboring job in Canada. And he did that for quite a while off and on picking up acting roles. He would do local theaters and pretty much anything that would come along. He actually did this from 1909 and did traveling theater for about 10 to 12 years, and eventually would take a job, you know, in between doing the farmhand jobs and everything. He would work his way across the country in Canada doing traveling theater, and then they worked their way down to some of the western states here in the United States. And once they got to North Dakota, he got a job in a theater production, and it actually lasted for an entire year. And this became the real bug that made him want to be an actor forever. And it's kind of strange in a weird way that he would become an actor, because throughout all these kind of manual labor farming jobs that he had over the years, he actually developed a pretty bad back, which kept him out of enlisting in World War I. And he actually had a lisp, he had a speech impediment that he would eventually work through. And then once he made his way to Hollywood in 1918, he started the way most actors do. He became an extra for Universal Pictures. So those of you that think that you can't get anywhere starting at the bottom, Boris Karloff is proof that you can. Now you might be a little surprised to find out that Boris Karloff, one of the things that he was well known for, what he proved himself in, was he was in Cinderella on the stage, and he actually played basically the haunted ghost. And even in a few productions, when it was needed, he would step in and be one of the evil stepsisters. Now originally when Boris arrived here in Los Angeles in 1918, he was staying actually at a boarding house that was right at the very top of Angel's Flight, the funicular that I've shown you guys before over there in Bunker Hill. And he stayed there for a while, and actually a friend of his that he had met while he was out kind of touring around doing the theater all across the country, loaned him a bunch of money and gave him a start. Basically said, I'll help you get a little bit of a financial situation going, as well as taking care of your room and board so that you can look for a job. And that's when he became an extra. And it's actually crazy, one day when he was out of work, he was walking down Hollywood Boulevard, popped in Actors Equity and said, I need a job, do you have anything? And they said, are you working now? And he said, no. So they sent him to try out for a play in downtown LA, and that play was actually what they consider to be, get out of here, fly. That's actually the play that they consider to be pretty much the start of his career. Now he actually got his official start being an extra in a Douglas Fairbanks picture, and he was actually offered Frankenstein. And so he agreed to do Frankenstein because he was one of those people, he never saw himself as a good-looking man or anything, and he just thought, hey, how hard would it be to bring a monster to life? And I think the reason that he was so good at that was actually because he, as well as Vincent Price, have both said in different interviews that their belief on how to play a villain or a monster is to not play against your viewer's intelligence, to make it believable, to really believe in the character yourself. Now, this house right here is actually the house that Boris Karloff bought and moved into from 1931 till 1934. So right after Frankenstein was made, and if you know anything about those movies, he actually ended up making 3 of them, and it was during, I believe, Son of Frankenstein that his one and only daughter Sarah would be born. And Sarah has said since then that, you know, he was the greatest father. She said he was basically the antithesis of everything that he portrayed on film. She said that he was a very nice guy. He was a very quiet guy. He loved children. Anytime there were children anywhere, he would go out of his way to give them attention. He would, year after year, address his father Christmas and would show up to an orphanage in Baltimore and hand out gifts. One of the things that she said that was kind of surprising to me, though, was that she said he never had any interest in mementos or collectibles or anything like that. She said he never collected anything that he ever used in a movie, never collected his own posters, nothing at all like that. And a lot of you may know Boris Karloff because he actually received a Grammy for doing the voice in 1966 of The Grinch That Stole Christmas, or The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Now, to say that Boris Karloff paid his dues would be an understatement, because when he did Frankenstein, that was the first real big thing that he did, and it's probably the thing that he will always be known for. But he actually had to sit in the makeup chair for 4 hours a day while they would work on that makeup, and then another hour at the end of the day taking it off, as well as the physical strain that it put on just carrying that around, playing that character. And like I said, it's something that he would always be known for. Now, what I love, what I think is so great, is that he continued to make movies, and he didn't always play a monster. He would play pretty much any character. He would even be an arsenic and old lace. But his very last picture he did was actually with Peter Bogdanovich, and it was right at the end of his career, and he actually believed that he was slipping. He didn't have a great on-screen presence, and he actually had that basically thrown out the window when he showed up on set and did the one scene and the one monologue that they had written for him. And after he got done, the entire cast and crew gave him a standing ovation and actually brought him to tears. Now, there have actually been numerous kind of hypotheses as to where he got his name, because Boris Karloff is not actually his real name. His real name is William Henry Pratt, and they said that when he signed official documents or contracts or anything, he always signed them W.H. Pratt, aka Boris Karloff. Now, some people had speculated that he had gotten his name from a Burroughs novel, but the Burroughs novel actually came out a few years after he was already using this name. And the reason that Boris said that he came up with the name is he said he thought his name was kind of plain. He said he thought Boris was an exotic sounding name, and Karloff was just part of a family name, and it was a Slavic name that went throughout his family, and he just thought that sounded like an interesting name. Now, throughout that whole time, from 1909 when he left London and would go to Canada, would work in the farming industry, would pick up any kind of acting gig he could get, he would join theater companies, he would travel all around that whole time from 1909 all the way until past 1931 when he made Frankenstein. He never went home. He never went back to visit his family because he actually thought that they would be ashamed of what he was doing. And when he finally went back to make a movie, he went to visit them, and to his surprise, all of his siblings were dying to get a photo with him. They couldn't force each other out of the way fast enough to get a photo with him, and he actually would retell this story throughout his life, that was one of the crowning moments, is that he was just expecting to be in such shame, and everybody was just absolutely tickled to see him. It's just amazing to think that a man who started out literally nowhere and would break into the business making $5 a day as an extra at Universal would eventually become a legend. You can't even think of the name Frankenstein without thinking of Boris. Every picture of Frankenstein is depicted off of that character that he created. And in the 1960s, he got a little bit of fun time, because what ended up happening is he signed a contract with American International Pictures. And American International was basically, at that time, they were buying up or trying to sign all the people who had been big horror stars throughout their career. People like Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Christopher Lee, Basil Rathbone. Basically all the people that you would end up seeing in the movie Comedy of Terrors or The Raven. And Boris Karloff actually made 2 movies called The Raven. The one that I love is an AIP picture, and you gotta see it. It's a comedy, and I think if you buy the DVD of The Raven, it comes with Comedy of Terrors. That's what I have. You have to get them both. You have to have that collection, because what happens is they basically play opposite characters. In one movie, Vincent Price is kind of he's the one you feel bad for, but then in the other movie, in Comedy of Terrors, he's the villain. And Boris Karloff has a great part in both movies. you have to see it. And the reason that they all signed up to do this was basically they grew up in that era of the Great Depression where they were just afraid not to work, and they saw it as kind of a funny gag that they could sign on to do these movies in London, and it was basically just like a vacation for them all to hang out. They would get to spend every day hanging out with people they considered to be great friends. Vincent Price said he always considered Boris Karloff to be one of his best friends and said he was just an absolutely lovely man. And he said the same thing that Sarah Karloff said. It was just that Boris was an absolute gentle giant. He never was angry, he never showed a dark side, and he loved people. Now sadly, when they actually made the movie for Arsenic and Old Lace, they didn't cast Boris Karloff to play the role that he had made famous. They actually cast Raymond Massey because Boris Karloff was still performing that role on Broadway in 1941. Now, when Boris Karloff decided to quit being Frankenstein, it really didn't have anything to do with what you would think. You would think it would be because he was tired of wearing 4-inch platform boots and 35 pounds worth of makeup. But it had actually a couple of different factors. One of them was that Universal saw how popular that character was and immediately copywrote everything to it, to where Boris Karloff couldn't really do anything, portray that character anywhere. And he just said by the time they were writing the last movie, he said they threw in pretty much everything in the melting pot. They had Wolfman, they had Dracula, they had the Hunchback, they had Frankenstein, they had everything, and he just said he thought it was ridiculous. He said he thought that the character had run its course and he didn't want to be a part of any more making movies with it. Now, he would be in other movies where they had a Frankenstein, but he would not portray Frankenstein. And it was actually because of Boris playing Frankenstein and those grueling 4 hours worth of makeup and the heavy 35-pound makeup and the boots and everything that he was such an outspoken advocate for the rights of actors. And he was one of the founding charter members of the Screen Actors Guild, actually possessing a card number of number 9. When Boris Karloff passed, it was actually from bronchitis, and he had actually moved back to London, or back to Sussex during that time period. So when he passed away, he had put in his will that he wanted to be cremated, and there are actually 2 plaques in 2 various places, one where he was cremated and one where the ashes were spread. Not a bad life he made for himself. An orphan who ended up becoming a screen icon, participated in television, movies, radio, and then won a Grammy, being ironically, one of the most beloved children's Christmas characters, a Grinch. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. And though the song sounded like it was being sung by Boris Karloff, it actually wasn't. And sadly, because he was a longtime smoker, Boris Karloff, in the last productions that he would do, would actually be suffering from emphysema, where only one lung would be working at half capacity. So when he wasn't filming, they said he would have an oxygen mask on with an oxygen tank. You might be interested to know that it took them 18 weeks to film Frankenstein, so Boris Karloff had to wear all of that makeup and the boots and everything for 18 weeks. He lost a considerable amount of weight, and when Fred Gwynne, who played Herman Munster on the Munsters, had to wear that actually happened to him as well. That's actually why the series only lasted for 2 years. He couldn't handle carrying all that around and how much he was sweating and how exhausted he was. So John and I are actually going to go out and we're going to go for a hike up Griffith Park. So I guess you guys are going as well. All right, here we go. There's the observatory. You see that? Somebody's been doing some cooking. It's like a frying pan. Right over there in the center, you can kind of see the Hollywood sign.
Good grief. There you can see the Hollywood sign. All right, we're working our way down. Ah, nice quiet evening in town. Doing a little late night Trader Joe's trip before they close down for the evening. All right, we got it. We're done.
Well, Jeffrey, let's call it a day. Well, gang, I'm gonna call it a night. I hope you guys enjoyed our little walk into horror history today. It's crazy to think that Boris Karloff is a household name and a legend and almost was a never was. He had toiled away on the stock circuit of doing the road for 10 years or more and had actually done equally the same amount as a movie extra, and finally was accidentally discovered eating in a commissary on Universal Studios lot. The man who was casting the movie walked by him, thought he had an interesting look, and started talking to him about being Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi was originally supposed to be Frankenstein. He was offered the part and turned it down. He simply didn't want to wear the makeup. He had had recent success with Dracula, and he thought that the charm to his personality and his character was his piercing, beautiful eyes and his charisma, and in the end, him turning that down ended up kind of sinking a lot of his career, as well as making Boris Karloff's career take off from there. And it's pretty crazy to think that by the time Boris Karloff had landed the part of Frankenstein in 1931, he had already made 81 movies as an extra. Just shows that you should never ever give up. I'm going to call it a night. I want to thank Jim Sasser and Anita Malloy Foster for their kind of interesting donations, and everyone else. Have a great night. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.